top guns at war in Canada's north.
It's like running around with your hair on fire. The hair on the back of your neck is standing up and you're looking around and there's just aircraft all around.
Fighter pilot, next. Cold Lake, Alberta. Every summer, frontline fighter aircraft and pilots from half a dozen nations gather at this remote Canadian base to engage in air combat, an exercise called Maple Flag. Twice a day, dozens of the world's hottest fighters thunder down the runway. In a given 2-week period, there may be F-16 Vipers from the US, the Netherlands, Belgium, New Zealand, and Singapore. F-15 Eagles from the United States. German F-4 Phantoms. Canadian F-18 Hornets. In the event of another Gulf War or Bosnia, many of those assembled at Cold Lake would be in the vanguard, launching punishing airstrikes, imposing the world community's will on an aggressor nation. Veteran Canadian F-18 pilot, Major Rick Boyd.
We brought together 7 or 8 air forces from around the world and over 100 different types of fighter aircraft and some resupply aircraft, the heavy transports. And we put them together in a coalition-type package. It may be a German one day that's leading, it may be a Dutch the next day, or an American or a Canadian. So we're drawing on each other's experiences and we're learning from each other's mistakes, and that's the nature of the game.
Maple Flag is designed to bridge the gap between training and war, a gap exposed in Vietnam, where 90% of U.S. aircraft shot down were flown by pilots on their first 10 combat missions.
Without simulated war training, if you go into a war theater where people are actually shooting real missiles at you, real bullets at you, and things are coming off the ground at you, if you haven't had any previous experience, your chances of survival are probably pretty slim.
Major Rick Boyd, a fighter pilot for 23 years, F-18 pilot for 8. His radio code name, Relic. Relic is a mass attack lead of 441 Squadron.
The exercise is tailored to the junior combat-ready wingman, the guy who just gets on the squadron, who is evolving through the wingman procedure, which is the lowest common denominator on a squadron, into the element lead, which is someone who can control 2 aircraft, into the section lead, who is someone who can control 4 aircraft or more in a formation.
Captain Rick Williams, Slick, age 27. He has about 400 hours of flying time in CF-18s. He will be Relic's wingman in this Maple Flag. His performance will determine if he is ready to assume command.
It's amazing how much you learn over a 2-week period of flying in Maple Flag. It's a confidence builder for myself and for most pilots to come out here and be involved in this big of scenario and do it safely and do it effectively. When you're taxiing out, you're obviously in a line of aircraft. Everywhere there's aircraft, fighters coming left from right, so you're very careful what you're doing. The excitement you feel when you're in a mass package is a lot different because you know you're part of something so huge. It's exciting. It's truly exciting. And when you get out on the runway to take off, that's usually when the butterflies go away.
Tower Red Dog, holding short sequence.
Don't do anything stupid. You're talking to yourself. Don't hit lead. Don't hit the ground. Get down safely. Don't bend the boss's jets.
Maple maple flag provides training in every aspect of aerial combat. Fighters engage in simulated dogfights. The heavies show up as well. Giant B-52 bombers, flying low, dodging SAMs. C-130 Hercules on tactical missions. German Transols trying to escape Stinger missiles. AWACS with their sophisticated radar control the air battle. And old T-33s fly loaded with electronic jamming gear. On the ground below, dummy aircraft, tanks, and old trucks provide targets for the strike aircraft. Electronic sensors measure their success against fixed targets. Ground troops from half a dozen nations man radar sites and hurl smoky SAMs, dummy surface-to-air missiles, at careless pilots. Cold Lake Air Weapons Range, selected originally because it resembled the North German plain, where NATO and the Warsaw Pact would have clashed in the days of the Cold War. 4,000 square miles of unrestricted airspace. Captain Rick Williams.
Maple Flag in Cold Lake, Alberta is one of the best places in the world to train due to our airspace, due to our range, due to all of the targets we have out there, and especially for the people from our brothers from down south, as well as from all over Europe. When they come here, the freedom of our airspace and their ability to use all of their weapons or their planes to the full extent possible, vis-a-vis supersonic, all that type of thing, chaff and flare in the air, is unrestricted, which makes for good, positive training for all.
European pilots, accustomed to flying in crowded air corridors over heavily populated areas, are enthused by the freedom afforded by Cold Lake. Germans Holger Best and Tom Scheer.
You can fly from 100 feet up to unlimited, and like in Germany, we have a minimum altitude of 1,000 feet, so you really can't fly very low. And here you just can go supersonic in 100 feet and then pop up to flight level 50, whatever you want, and nobody's bothering you.
It's actually the least restrictive airspace we ever flew in. There's no chance in Europe to do something like this.
The Germans still fly the venerable but effective F-4 Phantom. They and other national units are at this Maple Flag to practice flying as a coalition in a peace-threatening ethnic civil war. The coalition is called Blue Air. It is larger but lacks experience. Blue Air will attack. The defending force, Red Air, is the enemy, with fewer aircraft but highly skilled pilots. Canadian F-18 squadrons are engaged in both sides of the battle. Major Boyd's 441 Squadron is breaking new ground.
We played Red Air for the first time, which is the first time a Canadian fighter squadron has ever done that. The 414th at Analysis is the only aggressor squadron in the world that is trained to provide aggressor tactics or adversary tactics. Their aircraft are painted aggressor colors, desert brown or the sky blue. Their job in life is to make life miserable for USAF, U.S. Air Force, and Canadian pilots and other NATO and allied countries. That's their job, to go out and pounce on our mistakes.
Blue Air, the coalition force, will try to destroy Red Air's defenses, both air and ground. Fighters will attempt to drive Red Air from the sky, so strike aircraft can safely attack ground targets.
We're going to try and prevent the entire Blue Air package, which is composed of a strike package, air to ground, and an air package. We're going to try and prevent them from coming in and bombing our homeland. That's the ultimate game for us. But the whole package is designed to provide training for the massive amount of aircraft on the Blue Air side.
Leadership of the Blue Coalition force is rotated. Young officers get an opportunity to plan attacks involving dozens of aircraft. Today, a young Dutch captain, Herman den Besten, has been given the awesome responsibility of putting together Blue Air's entire operation plan.
Will be basically 3 pushes, the north push being the most heavy push with the Badger and Panthers in front, followed by Storm, Husky, Cobra and Kodak.
Basically, this is the first time that I'm leading a package like this. And in total, it's about 70, 75 aircraft that you are flying with. As a package commander, I have to take into consideration all the limitations and the capabilities of the other aircraft, what they can do, what they cannot do, and which task they are more than happy to fill out. That means that the things that they're good in, that's the things you want to use them for.
Okay, welcome to the Red Air briefing.
Red Air is led by MiG-1. He heads a unique F-16 squadron that uses Soviet bloc tactics. Every 2 weeks, a new coalition force is assembled at Cold Lake.
We have a matrix that we follow. It's over a 10-day campaign where it's a walk before you run approach. And we'll start off very easy objectives to present them a game plan, and we'll gradually step that up over the course of the exercise. So by the end of the exercise, after hopefully 10 days of flying that they're going to do, flying against us, they're going to fly in an environment that's as close to war as the real thing.
In this latest scenario, an outlaw nation condemned by the UN is defiantly resisting. Its Air Force, Red Air, is outnumbered and outgunned. Although fated to lose, it is considered highly dangerous.
We're Red Air, and we should lose. However, obviously they can't win all the time, so you go out there and you don't want to be pushovers. You don't want to just give it to them. You want to make them work for it, and I think we do that.
The basic fighting unit in air combat is the two-ship, lead and wingman. It is Major Boyd's responsibility to pass on his skill and knowledge to wingman Slick Williams to prepare him for combat leadership.
The bottom line is we provide mutual support to each other. My job would be to nurture him along, make sure that he doesn't get himself into trouble, take him into the theater, deliver weapons, employ whatever ordnance we're going to do, and also make sure that he safely gets back home. Slick has the skills to go on and graduate through the wingman into an element lead, into a section lead. He's the epitome of an F-18 fighter pilot, and that he progressed very rapidly. And in fact, I learned some stuff flying with Slick over the course of the past 4 or 5 months.
At the end of each sortie, Relic and Slick replay their air battle. Relic clarifying what happened and why in the confusion of aerial combat.
I get to watch the section lead with his ideas and his experience plan, and that's where I gain my experience from watching him go through why he makes decisions. And I start asking all the questions I have as a junior wingman, and Relic will sit down with me and instruct me on anything I want to know about or anything I didn't understand during the entire flight for as long as I really need.
Flying a fighter is definitely a young man's game. I'm 45. I am still very physically fit. I can still fly the Hornet with the best of them, but it's awful hard to keep up to those young guys coming in like Slick. I come down from a mission now, yeah, I'm tired and I'm beat, and I go back to my hot tub and relax, and I go back and I do it all over again the next day.
How you doing today? All set? That's good.
A young man's game it may be, but old fighter pilots never give up. Next. .441 Tactical Fighter Squadron, the Silver Fox, now based at Cold Lake, was formed during the Second World War. The squadron's motto, stalk and kill. 441 pilots flew Hurricanes, Spitfires, and Mustangs. They joined Fighter Command late in the war, but were in the heat of battle from Normandy to the heart of Germany. In 1942, at 18, Art Jewett joined 441. Now 74, he's been invited back to visit his old squadron at Cold Lake. During the International Fighter Pilot Gathering of Maple Flag, the old Spitfire pilot will go aloft in an F-18 with squadron leader Dave Burt.
How you doing, Art? All set?
Between Dave Burt and Art Jewett, half a century of dramatic change for fighter pilots. Jewett's Spitfire flew at about 400 miles an hour. The F-18 he will fly today travels at almost twice the speed of sound. But in their essentials, the role of the fighter pilot and the tactics he uses have not changed in more than 80 years. Art Jewett expresses the essence of those tactics.
Shoot the son of a bitch down any way you could.
40 years before Art Jewett went to war, the Red Baron of World War I, Manfred von Richthofen, studied tactics under Germany's Oswald Boelcke. Richthofen put Boelcke's lessons into a manual. It is still used today. The Canadian winner of the Top Gun competition, Steve Nerlich.
It's funny, it's true. The rules, when you're referring specifically to Boelcke's dicta, I believe is what it's called. I have a copy of that, and that was given to me in our basic fighter pilot course. And you can read through that and apply every single one of those dicta rules today. Always engage with an advantage. You know, you'd rather be an assassin than a fighter, because you'd rather get in unseen, make a kill, and run away.
There are no fighter aircraft at the beginning of the Great War. Generals see little use for the newfangled aircraft beyond reconnaissance, observing what is happening in the trenches on the other side. On April Fool's Day, 1915, a French pilot strapped a machine gun in front of his cockpit and fired it through a propeller, protected with steel plates. Pilots have been trying to shoot one another out of the sky ever since. Colonel Gerd Ballhausen is a member of today's German Air Force.
Air combat was developed in the First World War. The airplanes were simple, they had the machine guns, and that was the birth of the close combat, the dogfight. And that has remained very much the same in the Second World War. We have still what evolved in very early years of military aviation. The old classic dogfight. It is still there and won't go away.
There's a mythology of chivalry attached to air combat. The reality is not romantic.
We were supposed to try to get within 250 yards, come up on them or down on them and open fire. And that would cut an aircraft right in two if you gave them the whole load. Instructions were to try to get behind and really shoot the guy or whatever before they even saw you. And that was just plain bloody murder as far as I'm concerned, but it was also war. I don't know how you make the two come together in a sort of a Christian human way, but that was the name of the game, was murder.
With everyone sneaking up from the rear to launch an attack, someone had to watch the rear. In the early stages of the Second World War, the British send their fighters up in tightly grouped Vs. Steve Nerlich.
They were into a lot more close formation, or a fighting wing, or a three-ship Vic, with a lead pilot who was responsible for doing the gunnery, because gunnery takes a lot of concentration, and obviously his wingmen who were to check his six and make sure that no one was going to gun him.
After a few years of air battle, the British and almost everyone else decided that the best air fighting unit was the two-ship, lead and wingman. The lead did the bulk of the shooting. His wingman looked out for a surprise attack from enemy aircraft.
The wingman is expected to stay with his number one, his leader, and he protects the guy he's flying behind, even at the risk of his own life.
Today's swift jets still travel in pairs, and when they move into a combat zone, they spread out, putting over a mile between them.
So you don't have to be worried about running into your lead as you would have in the old days where you were flying closer to him in a fighting wing type position. So you can run all your onboard equipment, plus now you can split the visual lookout into two halves. Now you can be responsible for looking through your lead into the formation, and he does the same for you. And that way you cover 360 degrees, trying to pick up visual threats that are going to try and obviously kill one of you guys.
There have been tremendous advances in weaponry. In Art Jewett's time, speed was often sacrificed, so fighters could carry more guns and ammunition.
On the Spitfire 5B's beautiful aircraft, we had 8 machine guns, and at one time they had 4 20-millimeter Hispano Suiza cannons. Train busting it was pretty good because it would do a lot of damage to with the 4 cannons. At the end, we had 2 20-millimeter cannons and 4 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, which is a much heavier slug, and we could carry a pretty good load of ammo. And we had maybe 12 or 14 seconds if you held the finger down on the thing. We did a lot of low-level ground attacks on transport and troops and things like that. Stationary targets such as German field headquarters that we were sure of, and we didn't shoot up churches and things like that.
Art Jewett was using rockets against ground targets by the end of World War II. They were firecrackers compared to today's rockets. Perhaps the greatest advances in weaponry are those designed for air combat.
For a number of years, we've had very sophisticated missiles that we carry. In medium range, the heat-seeking missiles, like the Sidewinder, and in the long range, well beyond visual range, we use radar missiles. The young pilot, fairly inexperienced really, will very well be able to launch a missile at long range. And the most experienced man who is facing him, the missile doesn't care whether this guy has 10 years experience, whether he has 20 victories, or whether he has 100. If you are in the wrong place at the wrong time, you lose.
First, we had to be within 250 yards. You'd almost kiss the guy if he...
In Richthofen's day, squadron leaders tied streamers to their wingtips so they could be identified. Communication was by gesture or the waggle of wings. Pilots were essentially on their own. By Art Jewett's time, fighters were equipped with radio.
We didn't do much talking. We did what we were told. If there was a bunch of aircraft coming from the left-hand side above us, the squadron commander, somebody say, bandits, 7 o'clock high.
4 Sky, the east guy's coming hard into you, confirm. Okay. I've got the 1.
Altitude.
Today's fighter pilot is bombarded with information.
The amount of information coming into the cockpit often is just about overwhelming, and it comes down to just prioritizing what do I have to do right now to get the mission accomplished. Like trying to run your radar, navigate, look out the window for the visual lookout, listen, because now you have 2 radios, one for the formation of 2 to 8 aircraft, and the other one for an external controlling agency like the AWACS, trying to give you situational awareness or tell you where the bandits are.
Darkstar Bullseye 06030 hostile.
It's trap line from Red Dog 1. We get 2 MiGs in the northeast portion of Cap 1.
Sometimes you can just, you'll come back and listen to your tape, and it was all there. Someone had told you exactly what was happening, but you were just so busy, since you can only really analyze one thing at a time, that it just went in one ear and out the other, and you didn't hear anything. Yeah, it's a big problem.
Today's fighter pilot, he has the same feeling inside, but he's got a whole world of difference. They're very professional people. We're just a bunch of guys from the country that taught how to fly and fire machine guns and shoot at people and drink booze. And go to choir practice in church, of course, regularly.
The old fighter pilot, back on Earth, after his flight in squadron leader Dave Burt's F-18.
Look, we taxied out there and lined up on the runway. Took off, and from that point forward until I took my oxygen mask off, it was just a dream come true. That's the God's honest truth. I never expected anything like this. And I flew it a little bit, although I don't know whether I actually flew it or just the computer did, or Dave, but...
I was amazed. When I gave him control, the first 15, 20 seconds, there was a little bit of apprehension. I could feel it. And after that, we were just turning and zooming and rolling and chasing clouds like it was last week, not 50 years ago. It was amazing.
It was a lot like the Spitfire. The Spitfire, you flew it by feel. And I thought this heavy aircraft would be a sort of a heavy thing to handle. It flew just like a homesick angel. And I'm telling you, it was some beautiful feeling. The same as the Spit. That makes you feel good inside. And oh, by the way, these are the whoopee jugs. Just as clean, there's no vomit or anything in them. Once a fighter pilot, always a fighter pilot. And that feeling, I'll have that now till the day I croak. Maybe tomorrow or never, don't know when. But I'll never forget this memory and the feeling in the aircraft. Just beautiful. I wish I had one. Any chance of borrowing one of these things?
The CF-18 Hornet is Canada's only frontline fighter. Canadian squadrons took delivery from McDonnell Douglas in the 1980s. Veteran F-18 pilot Major Rick Boyd thinks it's second to none.
I've flown a lot of fighters over my time. The Hornet is by far the best. And I've flown against a lot of fighters over my time, and the Hornet is by far the best. There is no airframe in the world that can outperform our airframe right now. It may be a 12 or 13-year-old airframe, but there's no adversary out there in the world today that is going to match what our Canadian pilots can do with our own Canadian fighter.
Major Boyd led a Canadian team to the William Tell, the Top Gun competition in 1996, that beat everything the Americans could bring up against it.
Top team for William Tell 96 with 30,434 points, Team Canada.
On the awards night in October 1996, when they announced Team Canada and as the team lead, that was probably my crowning achievement in the military. And that's something that I'll take to my grave with me. And it's the one thing that I can honestly say that I accomplished was being part of that team. And there was no prouder moment for me to be team lead of the Team Canada on the fighter weapons competition that was held down there. The reason we bought the F-18 are a number of reasons. Number one, primarily, is because it's got two engines. The flying that we do here in Cold Lake and in the Canadian Forces with the fighter world is up north where there's no recourse of action if you've just got one engine.
The versatility of the F-18 was important to Air Force decision makers.
The other reason is the aircraft is dual role. It's got an air-to-ground role and an air-to-air role. We, flying the Hornet, have to be very proficient in both roles, and we train on a year-round basis for that.
The F-18 was built as a carrier aircraft for the U.S. Navy and Marines. Its heavy landing gear and the catapult tow bar on its nose wheel reveal its origins, as do its fold-up wings. But its astonishing performance has won it customers from Finland to Australia. It can fly rings around other aircraft and has power to burn.
The back end of the aircraft is the horsepower. This is the thrust. We have two twin GE 404 engines, each capable of producing 16,000 pounds of thrust in full afterburner with variable exhaust nozzles. Between the engines, we have the tailhook. All our fighters that we've had in the past for a number of years, and especially with the Hornet, have the tailhook between them right now. This is used primarily in case we have a malfunction when we're coming back to land, and we'll put the tailhook down. That will engage a cable that goes across the runway and bring us to a nice safe stop. If you take a look above me here, this is called the Lex leading edge extension, very unique to the CF-18 and to all Hornets in general, and it's almost like another wing.
With its nose tipped up, the Lex enables the F-18 to fly very slow under full control.
And it becomes very effective when we get into the very slow speed dogfighting, like fighting in a telephone booth almost. This is where we win the fight, right here with the Lex. This is the horizontal stabilator. There's two of them on the aircraft. They're independent of each other. You can actually roll the aircraft left and right just using these, but one will actually go up and one will go down. It's very different and kind of weird to see when you're standing behind or in front of the aircraft. And you can see by the sheer volume and size of this that they have a lot of movement. They affect the performance of the aircraft tremendously. This is what gives us tremendous turning capability at slow speed also. V-shaped twin vertical stabilators are unique to the Hornet, but they are the most predominant factor in the slow speed arena of the aircraft in conjunction with the Lex.
The Hornet can carry almost 7 tons of bombs, rockets, air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles. Fully loaded, it looks like a flying hardware store.
This is the primary weapon on the CF-18. This is a Sparrow or a radar-guided AIM-7 Mike. This missile is used in conjunction with the radar that we have in the nose of the aircraft, and it is used beyond visual range. The range of this missile is well in excess of 10 miles, but the nice thing about this missile is it's extremely fast. It's going to get from this aircraft to its target in a very short amount of time.
Stop. Ready to left. Left.
This is an AIM-9 Mike. Its nickname is the Sidewinder, and it's used in the visual arena and in close-in type dogfighting maneuvers. It is a missile that you can launch and then forget about because it just goes after the heat source of an aircraft, and it has a warhead just back in here a little bit, and when it gets in with a certain radius of the aircraft, it will explode and hopefully put some shrapnel into that aircraft, causing it some damage that takes it out of the fight. This is every fighter pilot's favorite toy. This is the M61A1 20mm cannon, and it has a tremendous firepower rate. And in a low rate of fire, it puts out 4,000 rounds a minute. High rate of fire puts out 6,000 rounds per minute. It's dual-rolled, both air-to-air and air-to-ground, and the most fun about this weapon is when we're doing strafing out at our academic range or any of the targets that we have out on our Cold Lake Air Weapons range. This is a Lau 5003 rocket launcher. The CF-18 carries these underneath the wings on the hard points. Inside this are 19 CRV-7s, rockets, and this is what they look like. And they literally just fit inside this cardboard container that is disposable, and when we go to fire, they actually fire through the cardboard nose, 19 at a time.
Cluster bombs and the laser-guided weaponry used in the Gulf War are also in the CF-18 inventory. This lightweight multi-mission fighter has state-of-the-art avionics. There are 25 onboard computers.
You've probably heard the term HOTAS before. That stands for hands-on throttle and stick. It's a very unique system to the F-18 and one that allows me to keep my head out of the cockpit, looking straight ahead or looking behind for the adversary that I may be flying. I can actually select weapons, radar modes, a number of different things without ever having to put my head down in the cockpit and touch a button. A lot of work and coordination in the hands in the heat of the battle to make sure that you're getting the right weapon selection or the right radar mode, but nonetheless, once you master that art, it's pretty easy to do it.
Controls not on the stick are on the throttle.
Coming back here, you can see there's lots of switches on the throttles. On the right throttle, this is for speed brakes. This is for the right radio. This is for the left radio for me to transmit. This is a chaff flare dispenser. By pushing it forward, I can release some chaff. By pulling it back, I get rid of flares. Down here in the bottom right-hand corner is our standby instruments. These are the old steam-driven instruments in case we have massive power failures in the aircraft, but I can still get the aircraft back on the ground. I particularly enjoy flying the Hornet, even though it's an older aircraft, but it is extremely capable in a dogfight, and that's what Exercise Maple Flag is all about.
The final battle of Maple Flag. Next. The final act of a 2-week element of Maple Flag. Over 100 aircraft wait on the ramp. When they are launched this time, Red Air and Blue Air will go at one another with everything they've got. Holger Best and Tom Shear will control Blue Air's escort aircraft. They've been briefed on their role by the Blue Air commander and planned their tactics. Relic, Slick, and Red Air have held their initial briefings as well. Now pilots from both forces meet for a mass briefing. The mission monitor, who alone knows both sides' plans and has the authority to change them for safety, calls the roll.
Smoke, Badger, Panther. On the east side of the range, 14,500 overcast, layered up to 350, visibility 15 plus.
The mission monitor will tell us what the weather is, what war he wants us to fly, the ROE, meaning the rules of engagement, and the type of war we're going to do for that day, meaning above the cloud, below the cloud, due to safety. And then Red Air would be cleared off from that brief in about 15 minutes or so.
When the UN next uses force to halt an aggressor nation, many of the pilots gathered today at Cold Lake will get the call to battle. They listen intently as the young Blue Air Coalition commander, Herman den Besten, reveals his plan of attack.
Okay, the basic game plan is to have basically push everybody at the same time at 3 different TRPs.
Okay, a big picture of what we're going to do today. Red versus blue, the big war, Maple Flag 30.
At Red Air, MiG-1 has decided where to locate his CAPs, combat air patrols, that will await the air assault.
So this is how we set up our cap right here with the 8 ship in the south and 8 ship in the north. And then we have some jammers and some comm jammers, radar jammers in the center of the area, trying to confuse the Blue Air.
Although MiG-1 is the lead of the Red Air tactic, each individual flight lead has to decide how his force ship will operate within the tactic.
Okay, we are the last line of defense today, guys. We are the only 4 guys who are going to defend the whole northwest corner of the range today against all those blue uglies that are going to come out. Our objectives today are to kick ass, take names, and show the checkered flag, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay, let's go kick some blue butt.
Time for the launch. Red and Blue use separate runways and fly off to their secret assembly points. And then the battle, this deadly game, is underway. Blue Air racing in on the attack, and Red Air trying to shoot them out of the sky.
We put 100 aircraft, 100 fast jets up in a small piece of sky, and we're all going in to hit a target in a very compressed block of time. There's a lot of deconfliction. There's a lot of potential for close calls, let alone mid-airs.
All kills are electronically tallied, but no one is eliminated. The escalating battle continues for over an hour, an eternity in modern aerial warfare.
It's like running around with your hair on fire because the hair on the back of your neck is standing up and you're looking around and there's just aircraft all around.
The dangers of air combat, even simulated combat, are very real. More than one aircraft lies buried beneath the muskeg on the Cold Lake Range.
I've lost a number of my friends all through peacetime training. That's just the price you pay for doing business, and I think to do that type of business, you have to come into the game with a very high ego and know that you're totally infallible and that this is never going to happen to you.
Ah, damn, I pores everywhere.
You've got to be watching the ground. You've got to be watching for your buddy. You've also got to be watching for that guy that's going to come in on you.
Major Boyd, Relic, maintains a grasp of the swirling air battle for his element, and when he spots a suitable target, calls on Slick to make the kill. For today, the wingman is the shooter.
As lead directs us to these confrontations, which we call merges, which is actual when our aircraft meet the other enemy's aircraft, he will identify it either as being friendly or as being hostile. And at the hostile call, it's my job to have weapon separation and actually take trigger and kill the adversary.
And 2 is a gun kill in the 4.
Jammer, Red Dog 3 and 4, committing group 250-23, 2000.
The battle doesn't end until aircraft are running out of fuel.
Engage the other man.
Pilot 1-1 flight. Time out initial.
Pilot 1-1 flight, number 1 for the right. Break approach end.
Pilot 1-1 flight. Gas ops.
When you come down from a mission like that, you're usually sweating. You usually lose a couple pounds. You're tired, you're exhausted, and that's just the beginning. That's the easy part of the mission.
It was a busy mission. We're all in one block and there's lots of blue air all over the place. But it was a lot of fun. And I think we got our objectives met.
Went pretty good. We saw quite a few planes out there. I think we did all right. I think Relic did maybe a little better than I did, but we'll see when we check the tape, see if the shots are good. Relic and I will go upstairs and check our tapes from the flight.
Well, basically, we're the decoy, so when we came out of the cap, there's me getting spiked there by somebody.
We want to get down all the technical information that went on during the flight, such as the time we actually committed, where the groups, where we were at all times, so that when we go to reconstruct the fight, we know at what time where we were, so that when we go to the mass debrief, it's all on the shot log for lead when he's asked any questions.
Right now, we're just trying to get around the blue air guys so we can attack the strike package.
Slick had an excellent mission, there's no doubt about it. He was where he was supposed to be, when he was supposed to be, and I made that perfectly clear to him when he landed that he had a very nice mission.
The F-4 Phantom taxis in carrying Tom Shear and Holger Best. With a radar operator, the Phantom is dangerous when it can fire missiles from long range.
It was a blast.
It was very successful. Our tactics went perfect today. Yeah, we shot a total of 6 aircraft we shot down by ourselves. And there were more from our wingmen.
And the young Dutch captain who planned the Blue Air attack.
In my opinion, it was a successful mission since we covered about 84% of all the targets. Of course, it's hard to assess with the threats being simulated all the time. But as far as I'm concerned, it was a pretty successful mission, yes.
Fighter pilots spend far more time being briefed and debriefed than they do flying.
At the mass debrief for the junior wingman is the first time that he usually realizes, holy cow, is that what actually happened out there?
And then the one that got away.
A tape of a lumbering old Hercules successfully evading a missile launcher draws cheers.
Should they be called into a theater tomorrow or next week or next year, they've at least got something under their belt, and it's been proven that the Red Flag series of exercises, of which Maple Flag is a part, have served that purpose.
Maple Flag coincides with posting time, new assignments for the coming year. Major Rick Boyd is given command of his own squadron, a combat support unit that flies T-33s and Griffin helicopters.
That's the good news. The bad news is always leaving a premier fighter like the F-18 behind, but there's some good people that are taking my place, and Slick is a good example of that.
Slick Williams becomes an element lead. Now it's his turn to train a younger pilot who flies on his wing.
But when they finally get that element lead assignment, where now they're their own leaders, they're going to take another young wingman that just arrived on the squadron. They're going to take them out. It's nice to see, and seeing Slick walk out the door, and he's got brass with him, and he's going off to do his own thing. It's nice to see, because that's the next generation. It's a good feeling. It's a great feeling.
War is not anything anybody wants, but as a fighter pilot, it's something you have to think about every day. You have to think that, yes, I could be the guy that goes next week to a hotspot somewhere in the world and exercise all the stuff that I'm practicing here now.